Immediate in the legislature in Guam is called to order. We are here for an emergency session. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker.
I'm sorry. Clerks, please take roll call to see if we have a quorum.
Senator Barnett, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Dwayne, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, Senator Parkinson, Senator Perez, Senator Quinata, Senator St. Augustine, Senator St. Nicolas, Senator Shelton, Senator Typhoon, Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is no quorum.
According to the clerks, there is not a quorum. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We need 8 for a quorum. The call to emergency session was sent at 4:21 p.m. for 9 a.m. today. It's now 9:34. So we will wait. I'm going to wait 15 more minutes until we have a quorum, and then I'm going to call it. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. We're back from recess. We didn't have a quorum earlier. The session again was called for 9 a.m. This is an emergency session called for 9 a.m. today. It is now 9:52. Clerks, please take roll.
Senator Barnett, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Dueñas, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Parkinson, Senator Perez, Senator Quinata, Senator San Augustine, Senator Nicolas, Senator Shelton, Senator Typhoon, Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is no quorum.
Suzusmasi, clerks. There's only 7 out of 8 that we need for a quorum, so we do not have a quorum.
I'm sorry, Madam Speaker.
Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Point of inquiry. Thank you, ma'am. What's the procedure when you don't have a quorum? Because I know the email and the notices had all gone out, and I believe I even saw the emergency session reported in the media. So, was there a glitch in the matrix that's preventing half of the body from being here? Because I'm new at this. What's the protocol?
I've not been told any reason that they're not here, except for Senator Perez, who is waiting for a caretaker to take care of her parents.
Thank you, ma'am.
Vice Speaker, you're recognized.
Thanks. On a point of information, Madam Speaker, I was informed that Senator Joe San Augustine was awaiting some utility efforts in his house in Jigo. So that's what his holdup is. Water and power, I think.
I'm getting signal. Is he here? All right, we'll take a 1-minute recess. They said there's another senator here, so we can have a quorum. 1-minute recess. We're back from recess. We're going to try one more time for a quorum. Clerks, please take roll.
Senator Barnett, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Dueñas, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Parkinson, Senator Perez, Senator Quinata, Senator San Augustine, Senator Nicolas, Senator Shelton, Senator Typhoon, Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
We now have a quorum for our emergency session. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Suzusmasi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to adopt today's legislative session agenda dated June 1st, 2023.
On the motion to adopt the agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Suzusmasi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative session agenda items 2 through 6.
That motion to waive items 2 through 6, which include the prayer, the recipient of Imaladan Mastaklu na Sacrificio, the Inifresi, and the singing of the hymns. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We've already established the roll. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Sedilus Masi. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative session agenda items 8 through 12, which are the call of the approval of the Legislative Journal, communications and petitions, messages from Imagahagan Guahan, reports of standing committees, and reports of select committees.
On that motion to waive, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Sedilus Masi. Madam Speaker, I move that bills introduced, Bill number 129-37LS, and resolutions introduced, Resolution number 141-37LS, be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Sedilus Masi. Madam Speaker, I move to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session.
On the motion to excuse senators not present, there's been an objection. On that motion to excuse senators not present for today's legislative session, please raise your hand if you are in favor of the motion.
Madam Speaker, I withdraw my motion.
The motion is withdrawn.
Madam Speaker,
We are now in motions.
Madam Speaker, I move to excuse Senator Sabina Perez from today's session.
On the motion to excuse Senator Perez from today's session, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. Is there any other motion? Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedilus Masi. I move to place Bill number 129-37LS on the legislative session agenda.
Can you please read the title?
Yes, Madam Speaker. This is a bill introduced by myself, Senator Roy Quinata, Senator Will Parkinson, and Senator Dwayne Nicolas, an act to authorize Imagahagan Guahan to utilize up to $50 million from the general fund for a post-Typhoon Mawar financial assistance program for Guam families.
Is that the bill as introduced?
Madam Speaker, as substituted.
Has that been put?
It has been sent to the clerks.
All right, we'll entertain the motion on the introduced version at this time until we get to the second reading. So on the motion to place on the agenda Bill number 129-37, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. Is there any other motion? Seeing no other motion, we will proceed. Majority Leader, we are now on legislative concurrence and consent calendar. You are recognized.
Sedilus Masi. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative session agenda items 15 and 16, the legislative concurrence, and the consent calendar.
Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are now on the second reading file. Majority Leader, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to substitute Bill number 129-37LS.
Have copies been passed out? Substitute version of this bill has been received by the clerks. It's placed on the session drive.
Madam Speaker, can we
And
take a recess
copies
to?
are being made, or being passed out, sorry.
I'm calling for a recess to review the substitute before we accept it.
We'll take a 1-minute recess. We're back from recess. The copies of the bill have been passed out, the substitute version. Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
There's
The
been a
motion
motion
was-
to substitute the bill.
Yes.
Is there any objection to accepting the substitute version? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Shelton, you're recognized on bill number 129-37 LS as substituted. Yes. Yes, this is an appropriation measure, so we will go to committee of the whole automatically. Senator San Augustine, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to speak first about the bill so that when we do go to the committee of the whole, we all understand where we're going. And
It's either we go to committee of the whole or we don't, yeah. So
So
it's supposed to be automatic.
I
We speak in
understand.
the committee of the whole.
I understand the automatic, but we need to understand, I just don't want us to be here all day knowing where we're going. And understood, I support the bill, but we just need to know how to fund it properly. That's all I'm
All right,
asking.
we're recessed, we're not recessed, we're gonna go into committee of the whole right now. So please proceed with the
So-
committee of the whole.
The Committee of the Whole is called to order. Materials for the Committee of the Whole are in the shared session Google Drive. Colleagues, drive folder labeled Committee of the Whole Bill numbers 129-37 LS. And I think this is the one that's substituted. Proposed amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerks via email, sessiondrive@guamlegislature.org. Amendments not in writing will be called out of order. Colleagues, the rules of engagement, 3 rounds for discussions. We will have 2 rounds of questions for the panel, with each senator allotted 5 minutes for questions, not including responses. Time to speak may not be yielded for more than one member to another. A member who yields that member's time on a question yields all that member's time on that question and may not later speak, even if all the time yielded was not used, and this is via section 1.202G3. After the completion of the 2 rounds of questions, panelists will be excused, and the 3rd round is for amendments and comments. And after we complete the discussion on the bill, I will allow the sponsor to close, and I will entertain a motion for the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole, followed by a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, at which time I will report out the bill as recommended by the Committee of the Whole. Thank you, and I understand. Where is
Madam Chair, point of inquiry.
state your point of inquiry, please?
Does this bill have a fiscal note attached to it?
No, it does not have a fiscal note.
How are we proceeding with an appropriations measure without a fiscal note attached to it?
I am going to take a moment's recess to get the clarification from OFB.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This committee is back in session. I will yield right now to OFB Executive Director, Mr. Guerrero, regarding the fiscal note. Was there one provided?
Thank you, Senator. Madam Chair. To answer the question, this particular bill was not submitted to Office of Finance and Budget, therefore a fiscal note was not prepared.
Madam Chair.
Senator Dwayne, yes.
Madam Chair, I call for recess then until we get a fiscal note. We cannot move forward. We don't even have a funding source to even start discussing this bill. People are out there right now. We're spreading false hope to people thinking that they're going to get $500. We don't even, as a body, are acting responsibly right now with a fiscal note that says that the funds are available. This is a pipe dream in front of us right now, and I think it's really, really, really incumbent upon this body to act responsibly and have the bare minimum of a fiscal note to state where the funds are going to come from for this bill. Otherwise, we're acting irresponsibly. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going to call for a moment's recess. This committee's back in session right now. We are right now at the point of checking whether the fiscal note was submitted or not. I'm going to take another moment's recess to confer with legal to see how this procedure can go forward. This committee of the whole is back in session. After conferring with legal, it was shared that a fiscal note can be waived. And at this time, I will recognize Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda Shelton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding, I move to waive the fiscal note requirement for Bill 129. As you know, we were called into emergency session. The public hearing requirement was waived for this bill. This bill was introduced yesterday while we were in emergency session, or 2 days ago while in emergency session. And so it was not sent to the Office of Finance and Budget. It was not sent to BBMR to request a fiscal note in that time. We are in a state of emergency, and I apologize. The Committee
Point
on
of
Rules-
information,
Yes.
Madam
Take
Chair,
your
sorry,
point of
sorry,
information,
Senator.
Senator Barnett.
The Committee on Rules did send a fiscal note request to BBMR yesterday, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Barnett.
Yes.
Secretary, you may proceed.
Thank you. I misspoke. I appreciate the work of the Committee on Rules. However, we moved into the emergency session rather quickly, and so we know that there wasn't enough time for that to happen. So I ask that we waive that requirement at this time because we have BBMR and we have the Office of Finance and Budget in front of us, the heads of both those offices, and we can answer the questions here today.
Thank you, Secretary Shelton. On the motion, there has been an objection. All those in favor of the motion to waive the fiscal note, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries. Legislative Secretary, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to introduce the bill.
You may proceed.
Seduas Masi, and thank you for the opportunity to discuss Bill number 129-37LS as substituted on the floor, and thank you to the panel for being here today. The measure seeks to deliver...
I do apologize,
Yes, please swear them in.
Secretary. At this time, I will ask that the Sergeant of Arms please proceed to the podium to the front and swear in the members present, the panel members present.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you all affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Madam Chair, you're under oath. You may proceed.
Thank you. Legislative Secretary, you are acknowledged.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And again, thank you for the opportunity to discuss Bill 129-37 as substituted on the floor. This measure seeks to deliver financial assistance directly to our families through $500 checks for those who have filed their 2021 tax returns or others who are eligible, such as those who did not meet the income threshold to file taxes for that income year or those who are receiving Social Security benefits. And it also includes a $1,000 payment for joint filers in this substitute version of the bill. Bill 129 recognizes the urgency of delivering much needed help to families across our island, many of whom have little to no safe and clean water, drinking water, water to do the necessary things in their home to live, and food sources. And Madam Chair, if approved, this measure authorizes the governor to use up to $50 million from the general fund, as well as all other local and federal sources, funding sources, not limited to the FY 2023 general fund reserves, what we know as the rainy day reserves, to fund this financial assistance program. And Madam Chair, if there were ever a rainy day for the people of Guam, I think that day is today. We endured a super typhoon in the last week. The people of Guam are strong and resilient, we know this, but we could use some help right now. The people of Guam, as was said yesterday, we shouldn't have to make them beg. And so, Madam Chair, despite everything that the people of Guam have endured through Typhoon Mawar, the disruption, the lives of the people of Guam has been enormous. Not only our families across. Madam Chair, can we get some order in here?
Order, please. Legislative Secretary, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Not only are families across Guam having to wait in long lines for food, for gas, for water, they're struggling to care for their children, the Manumku, without basic water and power services. Madam Chair, we're receiving calls in our office wondering.
My mic is on? Okay, I'm
Order,
sorry. I didn't
order.
realize my mic was on. Sorry for saying, false promises.
Senator Tello, you are out of order, please.
They just said my
You're-
mic is on, Madam Vice Speaker, so I just turned it off. Didn't realize it. I didn't
Senator
mean to
Tello,
say it
please.
straight out that
You
it's
are
false
out of
promises,
order.
as usual.
You are out of order. Thank you very much. Please, colleagues, I ask for respect in this august body. Secretary Amanda, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just ask our colleagues to have a little bit of respect while we talk about this bill, to at least give us the time of day to discuss how we can help the people of Guam. We spent the last 2 days talking about how we can give authority to the governor to spend the money that she sees fit to recover for the island. We heard directly from the mayor. We heard from FEMA. Recovery is moving slowly. We're not even in the recovery process yet, according to our master plan for disasters. And here we are having people calling our offices, looking for water, looking for food, and we can't give them the time of day to discuss a simple financial assistance program to people who lost
Point of information,
everything.
there is no
Some
money
people have
available.
lost
Senator
everything.
Just a point
Chaitagui,
of
you are out of
information.
order.
Just point of information.
Can
of
audio turn
information.
off the mic? Please, Senator Chaitagui, you are out of order. You will have your turn. Secretary Shelton, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This bill again provides a $500 one-time payment to individuals on Guam who have endured the typhoon, the loss that came along with this typhoon. 2 individuals in my office, just within our small little circle, lost their homes, lost their roofs. You know this, your family have also lost a lot. People are struggling. And we have had phone call after phone call of how they can get assistance, of food, of water, of gas. Our Manumku looking for this. And we have directed them to the Red Cross, to FEMA, to their mayors. But there is still more than that we can do as a body. There is. While the people of Guam are scrounging for their pennies, shaking out their couch cushions, looking through their cars for the spare change that they need to get through these next few weeks, because many are out of work, there is no power. Many are at home spending $15 for a case of water so that they can feed their babies instead of the usual $2 to fill up their 5-gallon bottle of water, or needing that to cook their food, an additional expense that they never would have had. And how long does a case of water last us? Not very long. All of these additional expenses that no one saw coming, $500 is not a lot of money. Some people have told me $500 is even a slap in the face to the people of Guam, to expect that $500 will get them back on their feet. But we know that this is something that we can do, a little bit of assistance to them. So while they're scrounging for these coins, a dollar here and there to get them through, the government of Guam, we as this body who can make this decision, can also scrounge and look for this money. In this new bill, the substitute version of the bill, we've included every possible funding source, local funding source, federal funding source that we have, to give the governor the authorization to pay these one-time cash assistance payments out. And so I know it's not something that we want to be here discussing today. We wish that we never felt this storm. We wish that this hurt and this suffering never came to the people of Guam. But this is our reality, and this is a way that we can help our people today. And so I ask our colleagues to at least give it the time of the day to be discussed. Give it a fair up or down vote. Let's ask the questions here. Where can we find the money? How can we put this together to push the direct assistance out to the people? We have our mayors working day and night, 24 hours a day, GPA, GWA responding. This is something that we can do on our end. We've given the assistance that's not directly to the people for recovery, and people are still crying for help. And so let's try. Please, colleagues, let's at least try.
Thank you, Senator Amanda. So based on the rules of engagement, I will start the round.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator San Augustine, do you have a point of information?
Yes, I do, but I also need a little bit more
State
clarification.
your point of information, sir.
Okay. As I read the bill, it identified any source, and I want to make sure it's very clear that this body has appropriated $50 million or more recently. And if this bill is saying the governor can use any local funds, I just wanted to make sure it's clear, because we're going to be asking questions about the source of funding, and the only current source of funding right now is to de-appropriate what we appropriated. I just want to make sure that's clear, and that's a point of information that's needed to be answered, because we're going to ask the panel, do you have money? That's answered already. OFB is going to say there's no money. So we just need to clear that before we start. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Duly noted, Senator San Augustine.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Senator Dwayne, please state your point of information.
Yes, and also in my consultation with the fiscal folks, this has to be done in a budget format, just so the body understands this will not be done within this bill. So anyone who's the champion of this effort today, after we find out we have no money, because we're going to find that out, must introduce a budget act to de-appropriate money, just like we do when we're doing the budget, to de-appropriate money from other funding sources in order to be able to do this. I'm sure Mr. Byrne is going to share with us today, like he told us a while back when we passed LEAP, when we passed gas assistance. Stop appropriating. There's no money. So if you're going to do it, I want to make it clear to our colleagues, because some of us here have never done a budget before. And so the bottom line is if you're going to do this, get to work, pull the budget out, de-appropriate so you can find the money. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you
Madam
for the
Chair,
point of information. Senator Duenas. Legislative Secretary Shelton, on the point of information, please state your point of information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to point out that in this bill it says notwithstanding any other provision of law. And so this bill already provides for that. And though I hope that we don't have to de-appropriate from anything, because we'll be able to be creative as a government to move some funds around, to hopefully prioritize the use of ARPA fundings first. And Madam Chair, can we get some order?
Order, please, colleagues. Order, colleagues. Please give the secretary the
That's our
opportunity
job that we're here
to
to
state
do
her point of
today.
information. Thank you.
To
Please
use the
proceed.
money how we see fit. And so I hope that we'll be able to prioritize the use of ARPA monies for other things that we've appropriated for in the past. The chair of the Office of Finance and Budget is correct. We recently appropriated $50 million, over $50 million to a break to the people of Guam, a credit for power. And what is that money going to do for them when the people of Guam don't have power right now?
Yeah. So, please, colleagues, Are you finished, Secretary?
Point of information, Madam Chair?
Yes. Senator Chadwick, you may state your point of information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill that we're listening to is totally false. You know, false promises. I'm doing my point of information. The bill is totally false.
Point of
It's
personal
giving-
privilege,
giving
Madam
out-
Chair. Point of personal privilege, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Chadwick, hold that thought.
Senator Shelton, I
Point of
gave you
personal
a chance to
privilege,
speak.
Madam Chair.
I gave you a chance to
moment's
speak,
recess.
Senator Shelton, so it's my turn. I'm telling you, this bill is false and it's hurting the people of Guam and their expectations. You're pulling at their heartstrings. But you're not going to tell my people of Guam.
This body's back from recess. Senator Chadwick, on the point of information, you still have the floor. Are you done?
I appreciate it, Madam Chair. I
Thank
think
you.
I'm done.
Thank you. We will start the round based on the rules of engagement. Speaker Terlahi, I will ask, you will start the round. Do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Absolutely. Can the fiscal team please tell us what is the state of the funding sources listed in this bill, and are we able to pass it as is?
I will open it up to the panel for the administration. Anybody who would like to start?
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Speaker Talahi. The measure that was passed yesterday during the discussion, I mentioned that the last CRER, we're $7+ million short. I gave you guys a snapshot of May, 7.6 million short. So to address the recovery efforts, and again, thank you for passing that measure. It's going to take a tremendous amount of fiscal discipline to first get the general fund back on an even keel, and then to get the funding together for the response. We can't do both. I'm sorry, as much as I would love to be able to sit here and tell my good friend Amanda that we got this, unfortunately, the truth of the matter is we don't.
Can you please speak to the general fund reserve that's listed in the bill, the deficit reduction, and the rainy day fund?
As I mentioned yesterday, we're 7-8 months into the fiscal year. We have roughly $7 million in the rainy day fund.
That's a balance? Mr. Byrne?
Yeah,
Please,
if I-
if you
if I-
could answer all these questions.
Yeah, if I could clarify on that. Based upon the April CRER, when we catch up, and DOA, we're still operating with a skeleton staff, but when we catch up, the balance will be 11.2 million.
Can you talk to all the funding sources listed here? Rainy day is different than this deficit reduction, the general fund reserve, right? The deficit reduction is just what you hold out from the agencies, from their appropriations? Oh, it's the
No.
same? Same?
The deficit reduction rainy day fund is the 2%. It's listed in the budget, and we net that out. And for this year, it's roughly $14 million for the entire year. So as Mr. Burns said, there's some postings and stuff. But, you know, we're not done with the fiscal year, and, you know, we haven't achieved the 14 million because he adds to it on a monthly basis.
So it's different than the rainy day fund, or the same?
It's the same thing.
Same thing. So this is one fund, the balance is 11 million. It's potentially 14 million at the end of the year if all our revenue comes in as projected. So we've got 11 or 14 million, and from the general fund, you're saying, according to the latest CRER, we're -7, or the current status of the CRER, a snapshot, is 7.6 million short. We passed 50 million yesterday.
In addition to, so the last CRER showed a $7 million plus.
Yeah, so we had exceeded revenue by 7 million. That means we're 14 million short today, according to the CRER. Then we passed a 50 million aid yesterday. I understand. And so is there any other way to fund this?
No.
Can we use ARP funds at this point to fund this?
The final rule is very clear on COVID-related incidents. There's no, in the current final rule, no, it's not an eligible expense.
It is not.
It is not.
Is the government of Guam expecting any money from FEMA that might be able to fund this?
Remember, we work on a reimbursable basis, so we have to actually pay, then document, then get reimbursed. There's no advance money.
Would you recommend de-appropriating from another source to fund this? And which source?
I would rather not comment on that because this is the policy-making body. If as Senator San Augustine suggested, I would leave it really up to you guys. I mean, my priority and your priority, I mean, we're not going to agree, right? So if the body comes up with something that you guys can agree on, then okay, but, you know.
Point of information, Madam Chair, the power of the purse is here. We should not be asking the administration to do that. We want to de-appropriate.
Excuse me? That's not a point of information. That's not giving me any information that was necessary while I have the floor.
Yes, yes, you do. Speaker, you still have the floor. You may proceed.
I am asking if there's any recommendation, if there's any appropriation that we have made that has not yet been used or may not be used under the current conditions, or that you're unable to use for other reasons. For example, staff shortage, or it's just not, you're not able to use. For example, are there vacancies and funding left from vacancies that we might be able to use?
No, ma'am.
There's no appropriation made to any agency right now that you don't anticipate to use.
I don't, we're 8 months into the fiscal year. We do have, like, for example, Department of Corrections. When somebody resigns, there's a GG1 right behind it to fill the vacancy. So one leaves, they have the ability to fill that spot. So there might be a lag in that new person coming on, but remember, that person that left normally takes their lump sum. So there's a outflow of cash for their annual leave or other eligible lump sum payouts.
Is there any money left from any of the assistance programs that we did during COVID that might be available for this purpose? I mean, I'm asking both of you if there's any funds from any other appropriation that we have made that is not being used.
What local appropriations? Yeah, none, right? No, Madam Speaker, I mean, like the gas tax relief, the GPA relief, those kind of things, I think the gas got extended, but I don't believe that that would be, again, a policy discussion if you wanted to, like, cut short a existing program to make money available.
That's what my question is. I'm asking which ones have not been funded yet that we anticipated, not just in those recent bills, but in the budget itself. But
We funded everything that we're supposed to fund. Mr. Byrne provides the legislature an weekly, monthly allocation for their operations. Yeah, so, I mean, there's a schedule of allocations from DOA, from appropriations in the general fund that have to continue to be made. So to cut, anybody's funding would require, a decision of this body.
of course, that's why I'm asking you these questions.
Yeah.
That's exactly why I'm asking. For example, if we had funded, a replacement of hardware, software that did not come through because of purchasing capability, did not come through because of hiring capability, did not come through for whatever reason. That's the kind of information the legislature does not have. That's the kind of information we can only get from the executive branch. That's why I'm asking you. So, Director Daphne Shimizu, for the Department of Revenue and Taxation, is this program, it looks similar to the programs that we've run before. Would your agency have any issue in implementing a program like this if there was funding?
So our team has met to discuss the mechanics of it. It's actually similar perhaps to All Rise, most similar to All Rise, which was done in 2021. And so, there were we do have certain recommendations which we could provide in writing so that you can have all the details with regards to the technical aspects of it. But, and again, we do have concern, I think, in particular about the 14 business days to try to turn this around if it became effective. But again, we believe it's similar to the All Rise program, and our team has actually, again, discussed it, but we could provide the details, the technical pieces of it. For example, some items we had discussed was, would these be subject to garnishment? How do you address the issue of perhaps dependents who file returns but cannot claim themselves, right? Also, people who are married filing separate, if they're, they would, although I think that if it's 500 and 1,000, it addresses that issue, but if it was 500 for across the board, people who are married filing separate versus people who are married filing joint would both receive the 500. So there are, again, very specific technical items that our team has already identified, which we could share with the body. We were working on a draft letter already, which we could provide.
Okay, appreciate that, especially based on the substitute bill, because I think it took care of some of those, right?
Yes.
All right, great.
Point of information, Madam Chair, I yield my time to the speaker.
Okay, thank you. If yesterday there was a request or an inquiry as to whether the LEAP program that was funded by both our ARP and general funds, if that was transferred all to ARP, that's 14 million, right? Or can you, I can't remember the amount. But that would free up those general funds, and you said that you would take that to the governor and consider it. But are there any other current appropriations where that might be done as well? If you were to do that, you don't really need our consent or consultation to do that. And I know that's what you mean when you say it's going to take your very hard work to find the 50 million that we appropriated yesterday, but that's urgent and has to get out. And so how, can you give us an idea of how much you anticipate of the expenditures of 50 million to be reimbursed within the next 6 months? Is that even possible?
I don't think it's possible. Mr. Esteves said that they're still in the incident phase. It's going to take a while for them to actually go out and start putting projects together, identifying projects, getting the information to support the claims for us to then pay for the upfront costs, and then for FEMA then to review everything that we've done and reimburse us. So it's going to take a lot of work, and as he mentioned, I think some areas might be quicker than others, and certainly will all help, because a lot of the like for the government of Guam specifically, a lot of stuff that we're pending on those 4 legacy projects is really documenting personnel costs, and we've been, Mr. Byrne has an open door for them to come and get the payroll records to help close those things out, but it seems like it just takes a little bit more effort. So no, I don't anticipate seeing very much in 6 months, ma'am.
Could I ask OFB, Mr. Director Steve Guerrero, do you see any source of any appropriation that we made in the recent budget bills that have not been used that might be a potential funding source for this aid to the people?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I just want to make it perfectly clear as far as OOB is concerned, and it's my own personal feeling that every appropriation made and passed by this legislature, it is my belief that it is important and critical for the purpose it was passed. There are some appropriations out there that, when I look into the records, they have yet to be expended, but they have been basically allocated. In other words, money has been set aside supposedly for them. Whether or not they're expended to date, I don't know. We can only assume that these projects are basically either in the process of being executed or in preparation to be executed. I don't know. The administration is in the best position right now to figure out what those appropriations are, what appropriations are available, depending on what funds have been allocated to these appropriations, actual cash. But like Mr. Carlson said, the May report didn't look so good, which I thought was anticipated. But adding that 7 million shortfall to what we have already calculated as what wasn't considered as part of the revenues, the last couple of bills that we've passed, the legislature has passed, we're kind of like short 14 million as we speak today. So I can't really answer your questions, Madam Speaker, but I can just assume that there are some appropriations out there that have not been executed, but I think the administration would be in a better position to determine which ones.
All right, thank you. And my final question then is, Mr. Byrne, welcome back. I'm not sure if you were here yesterday, so we passed a bill yesterday. Were you able to review that? My question is, that bill mentioned individual aid, and of course that was a substitute version. That language in particular came from the governor. It talks about individual aid. They would work with FEMA on surveys and individual aid, but that was an approved use of that 50 million that we appropriated. Is this type of a program possible from that 50 million?
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you. It's good to be home. I actually was on a plane yesterday, so I'm not familiar with all the terms that came through in the final bill. Individual aid is something that FEMA does offer, and like many other people, I registered on the FEMA online program, but none of us, I don't think yet, has been in a position to accumulate the losses that we expect to claim. And so I don't know that individual claimants yet know what their losses are in order to be able to claim that aid. Just to pick up on something that Mr. Carlson just said, this is a reimbursement program. And you know, one of the things that I certainly need to do very carefully is make sure that we have the cash in hand to pay out the claims before we get the money back from FEMA. And I'll be looking very, very carefully at that.
Mr. Carlson, is it possible, with the language passed yesterday, to do a program like this without any further legislation?
I don't even know the extent of the recovery costs. So remember, Mr. Esteves has A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I don't, even if he was here right now, if he was to say that this category is estimated at that, they're not even there yet. So I really don't, I think it's premature to even like take any kind of, make a statement to the question, sorry.
All right, well, the way I read it is, if it's part of the recovery efforts and it's authorized by yesterday's bill, that should be a method. However, because we only appropriated 50 million, and based on some of even the estimates we got from FEMA as to cost, from the mayors as to cost even of excavators per day, and the, you know, I'm just worried it's not enough. So that's why I've been asking you about these other sources of funding listed in the bill, any other potential funds from the general fund that we haven't used yet that we might be able to use to extend aid to these people right away, as opposed to waiting until see if that 50 million, you know, if there's anything left. And in fact, I think the estimates we got were, it's far short, right? And so I'm very concerned about it. I very much share the concerns of the sponsor of this bill, the sponsors of this bill, that people have really incurred extra costs in addition to extra harm and extra, but the extra costs are really, you know, if we can't get them this aid, you know, we have to work very hard to make sure that they are going to be met by the SNAP aid, the FEMA aid, and that it has to be the Red Cross aid, the government of Guam aid, and that it's fast enough. And that's really one of the reasons why I appreciate this bill, because it looks like it would be quicker than some of those programs, not all, but some, right, in getting that aid individually to these people.
Yeah. Can I just make one point?
Sure.
For even if we're going to deobligate something, you got to deobligate up to $15 million before you can like throw anything towards the program, because we're short.
All right. Are you looking at any other potential sources of aid besides FEMA that Guam might receive that we could use? For example, any adjustment in Section 30 or anything just that you have all been looking at, grant programs that might be a source of funding for this program?
Section 30, no. Any other federal sources, I'm not aware of any direct relief that is available. That's why FEMA was here. So I wish we were back up to the $80 million that we used to get for Section 30. There always seems to be a reconciliation that takes some of our numbers. As Mr. Guerrero will remember, we passed in the 23 budget a number that we thought was going to be sufficient, only to find out that, oh, there's a 3-year-old reconciliation, and so we ended up getting, what, like $5 million less? You know, and that, despite all that, like if you look at the CRER, you'll see, you know, it's negative, but, so, no.
I'm sure
nothing
you
from
get my
section-
gist. We're looking for any other sources, and
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
your testimony, the two of you, that there is absolutely no other funding source that we could use for this.
I do not know of any other funding source at this time.
What about previous reimbursements for typhoons or COVID or anything like that? Are we expecting anything like that?
No.
All right. Well, as I said, yeah, it's up to you to help us find any appropriations that are not being used for other purposes that we could use for this. I know you're struggling also to find those for the use of the 50 million. And we are, according to you, 14 million short on our general fund right now, not even accounting for the special funds, but 14 million short according to the CRERs, and there's 11 million in the rainy day fund. So that money may be available, 11 million. All right. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to Senator Parkinson for waiving his time.
You're very welcome, Speaker Terlahi. Senator Barnett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Definitely see the great need for this measure, this Bill 129-37. As you know, I too, and I'm sure all the colleagues here from both sides of the aisle have just been inundated and overwhelmed with. And even prior to this, the announcement of the introduction of this measure, just with overwhelmed and with need, right? I mean, I had a lady asking me, you know, could you put the insulin in the freezer? I just had someone ask me to support this, text me, ask me to support this bill because they don't receive SNAP and they're not going to be eligible for all of the SNAP upgrades that are going to be happening. So I definitely see the need, and I appreciate the urgency with which the main author and the co-sponsors introduced the measure. And it was something that I'd actually kicked around in my head, but of course because of the funding. And it's so easy to be skeptical here, you know, 6 months into my first term, because, and even having paid a little bit of attention before, I just don't know what to believe anymore, because these guys will come down to the legislature when they got something they want to do with, you know, a senator that they like, whatever day of the week it is, and all of a sudden there's just all this money to do it. Or other times, if it's a measure with, you know, a senator who's not on the right side of the aisle, or, you know, maybe not one of the queridas or the queridos, all of a sudden there's no money. So I'm just not even sure what to believe anymore. But I did want to ask Miss Daphne, thank you for being here, and thank you guys for being here. If we were to, through some miracle, pass this measure today, and, you know, what if we got a phone call from the gov, said, oh, I'm all in with this, you know, I want to help the people, I want to give them $500, this is how we're going to do it. How soon would you be able to issue the checks to the people of Guam who desperately need this money?
So again, my team did meet very briefly yesterday to discuss, and there is quite a bit of work that's involved in setting up this type of a program. There's going to be programming in our system. We have reached out already to DMR to just to advise them that this is a potential, something that may happen. There are supplies also, like for example, checks that will have to be ordered. I think realistically the 14 business days is not going to happen. It won't be possible. That 14 business days would bring us, if it were past today, I suppose, into like maybe the last or the second to the last week of June. We're thinking perhaps between 30 to 45 days. I'm not talking business days, right? So that would bring us into perhaps even mid-July at the latest. But of course, our team always does work really hard to try to get things out as quickly as possible. And so, again, but the 14 business days we don't believe is sufficient.
Can you just refresh my memory? I'm a little bit foggy on so you said that this program mostly mirrors the All Rise program. How long did it take you to stand up All Rise?
So with regards to All Rise, if you recall, there was, I believe it's Public Law 35-136. I think that was passed in the end of, it was like end of December 2020. And then there were some challenges with that. There was Executive Order 2020-11, which is actually referenced here. But then there was additionally Executive Order 2021-18, which isn't actually referenced here. So there was quite a few issues with regards to the technical aspects of being able to stand up that program. And so, but we had been discussing, our team had been discussing that since perhaps like December 2020, all the way until September 2021. And so again, there was a little bit more time involved.
Okay, so maybe I should ask, how long did it take you, or was there a second round of Rise?
No,
Okay.
there was just one.
Because I just have it in my mind if this mostly mirrors the Rise program, that you just kind of jump in it and turn on the ignition and everything's falling into place. That's not the case, though.
Well, so again, what we're hopeful that we could do is utilize the template of the RISE program that's in our system and maybe amend it or adjust it. And again, I just want to maybe make sure that the expectations are like set, and I don't want to commit to something that we're not capable or able to do. We understand full well that people are challenged with water and power, and you know, we ourselves, our agency, have people who lost you know, a lot during the storm. But you know, just want to make sure that the body is aware of the realities, is that there is some level of programming and perhaps even supplies that would need to be procured to be able to get this program going. And again, not to say that we couldn't try to stand it up in less than 30 days,
But do you think that the items that you would need to procure, the checks or whatnot for this program, could be procured with emergency procurement? Ma'am?
perhaps I could just
If I could respond,
refer.
yes, they can. Our experience has, even if you try and do that, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to get the checks. That might well align with the schedule that the director has just set out, but we will obviously set about that as soon as this law, if it is passed, gets passed.
So just to be clear, and as I did appreciate the urgency, Ms. Shimizu is saying that it would take at the very least a month to issue a check for this program should it pass.
I would say a month to make sure. So a month to get it stood up so that we can begin to accept applications. And just, if you recall, when All Rise was stood up, we began receiving applications on September 1. We made our first payments within 10 days. So, you know, the 30 to 45 days or so would allow for us to be able to stand it up, begin to get people to get applications in so that way we could pay. But from the time, like I mentioned, that we were able to get it stood up and begin to receive applications, it only took 10 days. It was September 1 was the first applications were received. September 10, we made the first payments. So, you know, it's really just the laying of the groundwork for it that really takes a little bit of time. Of course, we would do our best to work to make it more quick or as quick as possible. But again, we just want to make sure that it's clear what the realities are, and we don't want to commit to something that we can't, you know, meet.
Right. So just for clarity's sake, are all three of you here today speaking on behalf of the governor and testifying that there are absolutely no funds available to assist the people of Guam during this difficult time?
Yes.
Mr. Byrne?
I haven't spoken with the governor, having come back last night, but if that's what Mr. Carlson says.
Mr. Carlson, are you able to share at all? Did you speak with the governor on regarding this measure?
Called her before I came down here so we could make sure, as we always do, that we're on the same page. And as I mentioned earlier, the $14 million hole plus the response recovery. This on top of that, just can't do it.
You talked about the ARP final rule. Was there another final rule that came out?
No.
The final?
No, there's the final rule. Everything, like, remember when we were trying to do the gas relief? The gas relief was not because of COVID. So there was a request to use ARP money, but it's not COVID related.
Right. And so how much, if it's like 200 some, Mr. Byrne, how much ARP money do we have? Plenty, right? Plenty or plenty TT?
I'm reading from BBMR's April 30th report. There's $228 million.
$228 million in American Rescue Plan funds, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and so can you again refresh my memory? Why are we sitting on this money again?
Well, sitting on it is an emotive term that I don't know.
Why is it?
I would join myself with, but there is.
You know what I mean.
The funding that was granted to us was meant to last 4 years. We're 2.5 years into that. So, and it, as Mr. Carlson said a few minutes ago, this money was intended for COVID-related purposes, and that's what the final rule says. So the money is being spent within that period. It has to be obligated by 2024, is being spent in accordance with that plan.
So how much of this $288 million is obligated to the construction of a new hospital? And is that's allowable, obviously, right, under the COVID final rules for ARP?
It is an eligible expense in the final rule, and the number is still $160 million.
$160 million. And if we were to use any of this, or are we able to use any of this ARP funding for disaster relief, or did we get any final determination from Mr. Fenton on that?
Chair, I have a point of order, please.
Excuse me.
Point of order?
Yes, I will address the point of order.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. I'm referring to Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedures, particularly Section 101.1. Debate must be confined to the proposal before the body. There is no proposal before the body right now addressing the hospital or the ARP.
Duly noted. Senator Barnett.
So I cannot say
proceed.
hospital? What is the rule? I can't say
No,
hospital?
you may proceed, sir. With your
Okay, so
questioning,
he's
it's
just-
still in line.
He's
Based
just
on
showing
that.
off over there with his little Mason's book. Thank you.
Objection, Your Honor. Or,
Got
excuse
you.
me, pardon me, Chair. I would like that remark taken down.
We don't have that capability, man.
I would like that remark taken down.
I retract it. Thank you, Senator Fisher.
And I assume you're apologizing as
I'm
well to
sorry.
the body?
I didn't hear you guys apologizing when you were causing a ruckus over there.
Senator Barnett,
Thank you, ma'am.
you must
Thank you, Madam
address
Chair.
the
Yeah.
chair.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, are we able to use this ARP money for typhoon recovery? Did we receive a final determination from Mr. Fenton, who was here the other day, and he said that he had called his attorney asking about that? Are we able to use different federal funds and be reimbursed?
Okay, so I think your first question was, can we use ARP for this disaster relief? The answer is no. The speaker asked the question earlier. Mr. Fenton was very clear that we have to use local money and to get reimbursed. If we use anything else for disaster relief, then it's not FEMA reimbursement eligible. So he made that point very clear as well.
So just again, there's absolutely no way we can find any money to give the people of Guam this disaster relief.
Senator, we're $14 million short. We're going to work our rear ends off really, really hard to try to get the recovery money. So,
Do you think the people of Guam need this disaster relief money?
oh, hell yes. I mean, look, I'm not here to do anything but, you know, like I said, I really am not, this doesn't sit well with me because I consider Senator Shelton a very dear friend. So the last thing I want to do is sit here and say there's nothing. And I'm sorry, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and I mean that's why we're here. We don't, I don't know how to operate a backhoe, right? And this is the job that we have to do. And so, I didn't agree with, trying to keep the body from hearing this measure because that's what I was elected to do. You put something in front of us, we do the due diligence, we go into the committee of the whole, we ask the questions, we find out for sure. Because like I said, I'm skeptical. One day we got money, next day we don't. So, I'm just going through this process here, and I appreciate
So, if I may, sir, if, your previous statement about sometimes there's money if you're on the right side of the aisle, the other side, ultimately what comes down here is approved by this body, okay? So, I kind of took a little bit of offense to that because, a dog catcher proposal can come here and you guys can pass it. You hold the purse strings. Nobody else does. So the decision is made here. So I know you're 6 months into the job,
yeah.
But I would imagine
we
that
know
you know that by
what the
now.
reality is, though, Lester. It is what it is, to quote a phrase. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Senator Parkinson has yielded his time. Thank you, Senator Parkinson. Senator Dwayne, you are recognized.
Madam Chair. I just want to start by telling the panel, thank you for your sobriety, for your proper presentation of what needs to be done here, and for putting us in a position, those of us who are insulted by not determining a funding source before getting our people's hopes up. And Lester, I agree with you. We can all take shots here. I've taken a few myself. But the fact of the matter is, I'm new here. I'm sorry, that's not going to cut it. Because every funding source that we've discussed on this floor, that we've passed, for pay raises, for LEAP, you were here, been here in this body. We got OFB here. We've got BBMR here. Sometimes there's money and sometimes there's not money. We've appropriated all that money. This body has. And everything I've heard so far from the previous panel members is they don't want to do the work. Throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing if it's going to stick is not our job. That's a political move. So getting back to brass tacks, so I can ask you a respectful question once again, Mr. Carlson, because you deserve the due respect here on this issue. As you've represented so far by being close to $15 million in the hole, and the proposal of this bill for $50 million, this body would have to find $65 million in order to even think about this. Would that be correct?
As long as your $65 million doesn't impede our efforts to find the money for the recovery, yeah.
Exactly. Because in order to even be able to dream about this $50 million you've just put on the record, is we've got to balance the budget first. Now, do you once again reiterate and put on the record, because I like your statement of premature, should we, and would it be incumbent upon us, if we want to even be truthful to the people of Guam, take a recess, introduce a bill that identifies a true funding source by deappropriating from other areas in order to be able to make this a reality?
I would hope that if that exercise takes place, that the operational requirements for all branches of the government of Guam are not touched. The miscellaneous appropriations, so the COLA is done, the supplemental annuity is done. So you'd be looking at those areas, and those areas are almost exclusively addressed already. They're not like sitting waiting for something to happen. There are a couple measures. When is the audit coming out? So there are a couple measures that are, the funding is identified, but it's contingent upon the verification of what we stated and the body passed. But there are funding sources that can't be accessed until the audit determines, what it is that I'm sworn to say, which the body, thankfully, with Mr. Guerrero, feels comfortable enough to be able to proceed in passing those things. So when the audit comes out in June, if there's something there that, again, somebody wants to readdress, that's, again, your call.
Mr. Carlson, in all due respect to the governor, because I just want to, we cannot overemphasize this, because as political as this is right now, I can see people going out and saying, I tried, and we should use ARP. With respect to the governor, I'm sure you can make this comment. If the governor in any way could possibly use that ARP money for this purpose, could you put it on the record today that she absolutely would, but your representation is it's not eligible?
If she could, I'm sure she would find some area to redirect funds, but the point is she can't.
So once again, all federal sources, all local sources, one more time, there is no fairy dust in the fairy dust container.
That's a fairy dust statement. True, fairly.
Madam Chair, at this point, I move that we adjourn this session, subject to call the speaker. We're wasting people's time. We should be out there helping Red Cross feed people. We should be out there helping people process their applications for FEMA individual assistance. We should be out there helping the mayors and not sitting in here getting people's hopes up for nothing. At this time, I make a motion. We adjourn this ridiculous session.
There has been a motion placed on the body to adjourn this session subject to the call of the speaker. Are there any objections? There is an objection. All those in favor, please, who in favor to adjourn this session, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion fails. Senator Frank Blas, Minority Leader, you are recognized to the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. You know, I have to apologize, Mr. Carlson and Mr. Byrne and Mr. Guerrero and Ms. Shimizu. Seems like we have something that we were discussing yesterday just wasn't falling through, or wasn't resonating, and wasn't being understood. And so my apologies, Lester, for you having to repeat a lot of the stuff that you said yesterday. I don't think there's anybody that's in here that doesn't want to help where they can provide the help. But the key thing here is being able to provide is the root word here is able. Lester, I think you've been around government long enough, and in as far as the experience, and Mr. Guerrero as well. I think the last major man-made or natural disaster we had to endure was Mawar. When we were enduring Mawar, were there any other disasters that we had to endure, or we were just coming out of as well, other than Tataan? Was there a... No, other than Mawar, the last time was Mawar, right? That we had major, okay? Did we have to deal with COVID back then?
Remember Mr. Esteves mentioned Mangkut,
Yeah.
U2.
But in the midst of trying to deal with Mawar, did we have to deal with another disaster?
No, sir.
No.
Yeah.
This is probably a unique disaster in itself, in that while our hands are still being tied, and because of one calamity, we have to deal with another. And trying to cross the T's, dot the I's, and make sure that the monies fall in the same categories or in different categories can sometimes be a challenge, and I see that. You mentioned earlier that we have about a $14 million shortfall. That's as of today?
It'll be official on the 20th.
Okay.
Again, I wanted the body to get an idea, since yesterday was the 31st,
okay,
where we were, subject to some adjustments. But the $14 million is a good working number of where we are short.
Okay. When's the next typhoon that we're going to have? We would know that. So we would know whether, because we're dealing with a $14 million shortfall right now in the midst of this one, what kind of a catastrophe are we going to be in if we had to do this and we had to deal with another storm a couple months from now of this same magnitude?
I really don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it because Mr. Esteves said it yesterday. We're in typhoon season.
Yes, we are.
So.
Yes, we are. Okay. And, last one. I think that, I remember, I can recollect that during Mawar there was some financial aid that was provided to residents in the form of food stamps, right? Where'd that money come from? Where did that money come from? Or how is that processed?
Oh, that's when Mr. Esteves talked about Mawar, when the individual assistance is FEMA, when they make that declaration and announce it, pronounce it, whatever, that's when the food stamps come out, and it comes from FEMA.
So, but there's a process that has to happen.
Yes, sir.
And that process will basically happen sometime after we get out of this initial phase that we're still in. 8 days into this thing, and we're still in basically our response phase.
Correct.
Right? So the application process and the ability to be able to apply for this this assistance is still a possibility, but it comes in a later stage.
If I recall, and there are people here that were around, the food stamp, everybody was eligible.
Sure, right.
I mean, I got it. I stood in line.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. But it was for food. Yeah. One of the concerns that I have here and with this bill is that this is $500 all inclusive. Do you foresee that this possibly can damage, or it would it wouldn't help the cause for an individual who was looking for public assistance in other fashions, federal public assistance, if already the government of Guam had already provided them with the financial assistance?
I think it's safe to say, sir, it's separate. I don't think FEMA would hold it against their determination of the 160,000 residents and da-da-da-da-da, whatever that formula was, that the government had the wherewithal to do something locally, while FEMA, by regulation, you know, so
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is FEMA will only provide what the government couldn't provide.
no, I don't. FEMA will provide what FEMA can provide. If the government was able to do something,
Provided that they were able to do it in the front end, but if they don't have the means in the front end, it can't be done. That's what I'm getting at,
you're right.
okay? So at the end of the day is I think one of the concerns that you brought up, Mr. Carlson, was that right now is your challenge trying to find the resources available, the money available to address the response needs of this island? And you're trying to do that with already what you anticipate to be a $14 million shortfall?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so you got to teach me that trick of how you can be able to squeeze a nickel from the 2 pennies you got between your fingers. Okay? So is it safe to say that while you're struggling to find that, already recognizing you're going to have a shortfall in this thing, a measure such as this complicates, for lack of a better term, I think there's a more succinct term than complicates it, but makes it extremely difficult to be able to meet those financial, the financial needs of being able to provide the water and the power and the basic services that people lost in this typhoon? You're finding it difficult? You're going to find it difficult to be able to get that money?
Again, sir, I say this with the most contrite heart. I really wish we could do this.
Okay. Can I use my last 11 seconds to ask Mr. Guerrero if he feels the same way about, the struggles and being able to find the money for the response based on everything that's already been appropriated?
Senator, I would like to think that all the revenues that have been generated thus far this fiscal year would be enough or ample to cover the costs of what we've already expended. We have about 5-6 months more to go in the fiscal year, and like Mr. Carlson said, what was the great months in the first 4 months of this fiscal year turned out to be something nobody expected. And while we were running on the tune of projecting a $45-50 million excess by the end of the year, here we are 7 months later, $14 million in the hole. Mind you, in the first 4 months of this fiscal year, we appropriated a lot of excess monies. And now, at least for me, I'm more concerned about what we appropriate in the FY23 budget to make sure that this government is able to generate sufficient funds to at least cover those appropriations, let alone all those that were passed subsequent to the Budget Act.
Okay. So in the last 5 minutes, all we heard is there's no money, right? Mr. Byrne?
I would echo what Mr. Carlson said. If the reason for the bill is well understood and everybody would wish that money were in people's hands, but if there is none, that makes it very difficult.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You're very welcome, Minority Leader. I will go ahead and start with Senator Lohan on the second row.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, panel. How are you all doing this morning? I'd like to start as well to apologize to Mr. Carlson and Mr. Guerrero. Mr. Burns and Ms. Shimizu weren't here for a few days, but I'd like to apologize to, of course, Mr. Carlson for having to endure this as well. I know Tuesday you were the last one to be questioned, and we all wish that you were the first one to be questioned, because when you were the last one, we recessed because you finally told us there was no money. And so it resulted on a bill that was substituted that made it more palatable and hard, but maybe workable. But thank you again. And you know, if I can read your mind, Mr. Carlson, you're probably saying, how many times do I have to say no to you knuckleheads for you to understand there is no money?
That's not in my mind, sir. Like I said, I really am between a rock and a hard place, because I would really love to support this. But
and we all do. We all do. We all absolutely do. And again, we've been here. This would be the third day. And let me just reiterate again. The past couple of days, you told us with the governor's transfer authority, there's 11,924,089 in her transfer authority, that if that were to be used, that the government of Guam will be facing a pay less payday, right?
that would eat into operations, yes.
Okay. So let's fast forward, and I'll ask you this scenario. If this bill were to pass, I know it probably wouldn't be signed into law, but if it were to be overwritten, as is, if it were to pass, what would this do to the government of Guam?
Well, first things first. My understanding is the prioritization of the measure passed yesterday is our
sure,
primary focus.
And that's hard enough to deal with, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't think it's.
I mean, it's unthinkable, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You don't have to go any further with that. I think my questioning is, I think it's enough. You're going to be finding different ways to say no money, and I'm done, and that's it. And as the former colleague from Tamuni said, what are we doing? We're wasting our time here. There's no money. How many times do we need to be told there's absolutely no money? As much as we want to, we wish we could, but we absolutely can't. And that being said, and even if this could be done at this point, it wouldn't be something that, if it was done, it wouldn't be reimbursable through FEMA, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Senator Lahan. Senator Joanne Brown, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I don't even know how to start here. When we voted this bill down yesterday, and we were here for 2 days, which I think we could have addressed the emergency the other day in the morning and had moved on, so we could allow the actual people that need to do the real work out there of recovery to proceed. And I've heard that message. I'm actually very pleased the administration now is coming forth with what we already anticipated was going to happen, because yes, wonderful, we were receiving all this money because of COVID and the military buildup, but we anticipated that, at least certainly I did, I've mentioned it many times on this floor, that we were going to see a decrease of revenue coming in, especially when we continue to increase the obligations on the backs of our people. And now we're here today because some of our colleagues want to appear that they, probably more than anyone else here on Guam, want to help the people of Guam. We all do. The emergency measure that we passed yesterday was a very critical step to doing that. There's nothing unique about this typhoon. We just haven't been through one in a long time. How this legislature is responding to it is where my big question mark is. Really, in what our priorities are at a time when many of our people are, yes, challenged and suffering and dealing with very adverse circumstances. But the idea that we are going to come here and that the only solution to help that situation is to continue to appropriate and appropriate and appropriate more of the people's money, even when it's not available. Because we've had this legislature, the last one, that loves to appropriate money under Democratic leadership. Let's spend, 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 spend. And yet not address the critical impacts that we're creating as a result of this. What we think this bill is going to do will ultimately do more harm when we can't fund critical operations in this government. That's the reality. You know, that little glitch our employees in the government felt, and there were a number of them, including employees here at the Guam Legislature, of what it's like to not get paid on time. I've experienced that. Others in the government that have been here for many years have experienced that, have gone through pay cuts. So you tell me, the sponsors of this bill, which government or Guam employee you're willing to take the money out of their paycheck. Maybe you should take it out of yours. Because we want to show and tell the people that we care for them so much during times of adversity, that we're their savior. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. Not my great words. This is leadership. I'll tell you what I've been thinking about this bill, because I've been thinking about this bill since we got called into emergency session, because our speaker thinks this is an emergency response. We are preying on the challenges that our people are going through right now with wanting to make them think that, oh, we're going to give you $500 because we really care for you. But we can't even give them safety in their own community. We can't give our kids quality education and a safe school. We can't even give our people good health care. But we want to say, oh, my dear people of Guam, we're giving you money during your time of need because you're in such desperate need. But we're not supporting the infrastructure. And yes, the reality, for those of you that have not been through it because you don't have the age of experience, when you go through one typhoon after another, what are you going to do, the sponsors of this bill, my dear colleagues, when the next one comes? Or the next crisis comes that we were not anticipating? What are you going to do? What are you going to do when there's no money left? Go borrow it from the bank? When we're already at our debt limit? This is not leadership. This is not leadership.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Legislative Secretary, you are recognized to the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the team, the panel, for being here today, answering the questions, most especially to DRT. I know that you've been inundated with calls with many people who are, anticipating this kind of help or, showing that there is a real need here today. We've discussed, I think the speaker, previous speakers before me here in front of me have hit many of the questions that I wanted to ask about ARP money, about any types of funding available within the government of Guam that has not been expended, but we have appropriated. And I wanted to ask Mr. Carlson, Mr. Byrne, if we can bring back what we discussed yesterday, ARP money, and using that for the LEAP. You said you would bring the question back to the governor. Is there any answer?
Can you restate that question?
Sure. We appropriated recently $15 million of general fund money for the LEAP program in the legislature. There was a discussion about going back to using ARP money to fund the LEAP program instead of the general fund appropriation that we made. I know that you said, I may have heard it wrong, but I believe you said you would bring that comment back to the governor and ask what can be done. Has there been any discussion?
Yeah, Senator Blas, I think, asked me. I did speak with her, and she said no.
Okay, but there is still a possibility that ARP money can be used for LEAP. Our LEAP program was created in response to COVID.
No, that's not the legislative appropriation is 15 million.
Yes.
She promised to match, or not match, but add in 5. His question was, can she up it so that, you know, it reduces the deficit? And her answer was no.
Okay. But she has used ARP money to fund LEAP program.
Yes.
Okay. So it has been done, it is allowable.
Yes.
Okay, and there is still, how much ARP money left? You gave us a grand total. I know you said there's $160 million. Okay, so we have 228. That is inclusive of the $160 million for the hospital.
That's correct.
Okay. We've made appropriations in the Budget Act to account for utilities for our different agencies, and we know that the fuel surcharge is going to be cut by 22% in this month. We're in June now, so June. Can you talk about any potential savings there?
If I'm not mistaken, the energy rates went up. Now they're going down, so it might just kind of still be underfunded, quite honestly.
So no hope that the surcharge will give us any potential savings for utilities?
We'd have to wait and see because, again, our power bills went up. You guys thankfully reduced our power bills by $100, but it didn't change the rate that we were getting charged. It just offset, you know, but. Go ahead. Mr. Byrne is reminding me that it was residents and businesses, but not the government of Guam.
Yes, not for the government of Guam, but the reduction to the surcharge certainly would apply to the government of Guam.
I don't know. You know that there are tiers of rates, right? And that the government of Guam, for God knows what reason, pays the highest rate for power. Military is the lowest. Government pays the highest. I still don't understand why.
Okay. So my understanding is that it would help, and I hope that we could get some confirmation there and see if there are any numbers that we can bring back, especially for our agencies that are not running on island power, maybe over the next several months that we can see some savings from that, especially the schools that will be closed, just to keep that as a consideration for us today.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, yesterday we passed Bill 127. That did not deappropriate the $50 million from any previous appropriations or authorizations in our Budget Act. We simply gave an authorization, just as this bill would do, give an authorization of money from the general fund, of money from the rainy day fund, any local or federal money that could be available for the governor to use. So $50 million yesterday, which also included language that it could be used for individual assistance if the governor saw fit to do that for a recovery effort. And so today we have this bill before us that is asking for an individual assistance for the people of Guam. Is it correct to say that it would be possible to use this $50 million in yesterday's bill to apply to today's bill? A portion of it at least.
Ma'am, we really need to see the assessment to understand the damages, the amounts, what this amount that the authorization provided for us to be able to have. As Mr. Esteves mentioned, there was one project that was de-obligated because the agency didn't have the 25%. So we can go all the way up the aisle and not get married because we don't have the 25%. So it's a little too early to understand the magnitude, the dollar amounts of the damage, and then how much of what it is that was authorized yesterday, how far that goes towards that. So I don't think we're there yet to be able to say we could cut out a portion and not actually have that adversely affect, the recovery.
Okay, we can't say today what the full recovery total is for the island of Guam and how much we'll need. I'm sure we'll need much more than $50 million. As FEMA was here to testify a couple of days ago. But that doesn't stop us from prioritizing what programs we want to fund, what we deem as recovery efforts in the government of Guam.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will save it for the next round. Thank you again to the panel.
Thank you. You're welcome, Legislative Secretary. Senator Dwayne Nicolas, you're recognized at this time for questions to the panel.
Good morning, panel. Thank you for showing up. I'm starting to realize that everything that I do now is political. And although, everything I say can and will be used against me. And, really what I want to do is I wanted to assist my colleague and hopefully find a solution. And I do understand that we are in the middle of just the, the first couple of days of recovery, and we all want to just try to help the people of Guam. And I wish that had a genie in a bottle and could just wish for $50 million, but with all the information that is coming back to us, and I've been listening, I guess, intently to the responses, but I also want to make sure that we're doing this prudently. Is there anything that we can do? Or one more thing, I didn't want to also jeopardize perhaps the FEMA recovery projects that might come about. So I hope that this measure, if it does go, that it wouldn't hinder anything. Is there any way we can make this work? I mean, we've appropriated monies, $20 million to the education department. Is there any way we can take that and use it for this? Mr. Byrne?
I seem to be the one
Yeah,
left.
the money's there, right? Yeah.
Yes, as Mr. Carlson said earlier, in response to an earlier question, this body can deappropriate funds at its will, and that decision is wholly yours.
Yes, and it's just because now this is more, I guess, emergent than at the moment. That maybe our people might need the funds allocated in that fashion. Then,
well, it's always true. I mean that an immediate need, like we're talking about yesterday and today, is going to result in earlier spending than a capital project that takes time to specify, procure, and install before you pay it. Yeah. This certainly, is an emergent need.
Yes, sir.
And if you so choose to change the priorities, that's your decision, and the administration will abide by it.
Thank you, sir. I beg your apologies, and my colleagues. I'm still quite new to this, and I'm not ashamed to say so. Thank you again to the panel, and I just wanted to try to make sure that we can do everything we could to help and assist the people of Guam at the moment. And thank you, sir, for showing up. And I just wish the people of Guam the best as we recover through this. Thank you, sir. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator Nicolas. Senator Joseph Augustine, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe Ed, DOA, because Mr. Carlson's not there. So, Mr. Byrne, what is your understanding of the bill? What is your understanding of the bill, the very first line 3 on page 1?
Well, can I preface anything I say, Senators, that,
It's just your understanding.
This is the first time we've looked at this bill.
No, just that line. The line there when it says, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, in addition to the authority granted. That's all. I just want to know if you understood.
Actually, that's a very difficult phrase to have to interpret, because it's starting out a long sentence, right? And it says, notwithstanding and in addition to the authority granted, the governor is authorized to utilize up to $50 million. So I guess, assuming there aren't other notwithstandings that trump this notwithstanding, you could conclude that this bill is
powerful.
Yes. I'm searching for the right words because I want to get it right. This bill not necessarily supersedes, but preempts perhaps some other bill.
Yes. I just want to make sure that my colleagues and the people of Guam are listening, that this bill basically is saying, and I spoke to legal about this, that it authorized the governor that if she finds any bill that we pass that appropriates money that has not been given or has not been used, she can use it. And Mr. Carson was here. He can go down the listing of every appropriation that was given, every bill that has been appropriate. If the governor feels that she's never going to get to this and that, she can put that money all together and add up to $50 million. You do understand that, right?
Yes, sir. But I hope the body understands that to be the case, and should that decision be taken, that they will understand the circumstances under which the governor may or may not have taken that decision.
That's correct. But at least the option would be there. Yes. At least we understand that, and you understand that, is that option is there, and that's why that bill, the bill is as substituted. It's not as originally written. And yesterday, you weren't here, but they brought up the issue of FEMA and their assistance and stuff like that. And just to let my colleagues know that I did reach out to our delegate, Jim Warren, and ask him, is there any way he can convince Congress to waive or allow a portion of ARP money to be used to help the people of Guam? And he said he is working on that. I just wanted to make that known because Mr. Byrne, and if Lester was here, is that ARP money is restricted to COVID. Understood. That's an easy one. But if Congress can waive a portion only because of the condition we're faced, the government could probably use that money.
It's a congressional law, and Congress can can
Can
decide
change
to
it.
change it.
That's correct. But I like to also make sure that my colleagues understands that if you've been watching the news, Congress is actually trying to find a way to grab all the money today back. If you don't use it, there's no more deadline. And I just want to make sure that that's well known. But my main, gosh, that was really the main question. I want to maybe pass that on also to Mr. Carlson, if he understands that that's how the bill is written. Lester, maybe you can answer, give maybe the same answer, but what is your opinion of line 3 on page 1? If this bill passes, what do you think that authorizes? Because remember, this could be the last bill for a while, or that deals in money.
Are you asking me if the word
Yeah,
notwithstanding?
your opinion, or what is your interpretation of that? Because the people of Guam want to make sure that the provisions is not the legislature passing an appropriation, but authorizing the governor to decide which appropriation, because it's notwithstanding any other provisions, which appropriation is out there that's still sitting in the books, hasn't been executed, that she can use if she chooses to. Because she may not choose to, because why? We're in the incident phase, not yet recovery, and I know that every penny is being used to maximum the impact or the use of the FEMA reimbursement of the 75-25 or 90-10 or whatever. So I was just wanted to make sure that you have an understanding of what I have an understanding as I spoke to legal, that the governor can use this as her authority to not de-appropriate, but use the money that's been appropriate. And until a later date, that if there is fund, then she can continue the appropriation that was already passed previously.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
pretty much right? Okay.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that yesterday to Senator Blas.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that on this bill, it's still the same. It's the governor's choice.
Yeah, but it doubles the choice.
Understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I, sorry I walked away, but
No, you're good.
Can I read something that the governor sent me?
Please.
I was under the impression that FEMA had not made the individual assistance declaration official, that they were still doing assessments. Apparently, they have already granted and approved the individual assistance program. Mr. Burns said that he already registered. The governor sends this message. FEMA has a very generous individual assistance program, direct cash of $1,000 for home and property damages to include cars. This is direct money via check or direct deposit. Cash grants for house repair up to $41,000 plus other needs up to $41,000 in generators and personal. Over 5,000 people have registered. They're opening up an assistance center, and they will have FEMA people helping with registering for the individual assistance program very, very shortly. So the individual assistance program is different from what we passed yesterday. So there's a FEMA, your question earlier about federal assistance. Apparently, there is been a approval by FEMA on that. Red Cross is going to be giving out, don't ask me what a CAP card is, cash assistance program cards of $560. It's like a credit card. Plus, if they need it for health or mental health needs, additional $560 will be loaded. So The question that the speaker asked, and maybe a couple other senators, about do I know of any other federal assistance that is available? I did not know until she called me to tell me that this individual assistance program has been approved, and I think there's an 800 number that people can dial. I don't have that number. But for all intents and purposes, this is a quicker and more generous program, and it doesn't cost the government of Guam a dime.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. I just hope that you guys can get your communication people to publish that hot all over the radio and news. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome, Senator San Augustine. Senator Roy Quinata, you're recognized at this time.
Sizos Masi, Madam Chair. You know, good afternoon, panel. Thank you guys for coming out here. I know you guys are doing everything and anything possible, humanly possible. You know, Debbie Taspia sa lapid and penyo tuka hafa na problema gihuzung. Enigi na mangai gihit, enigi ma manambota hit. Manai hit tansa puna possibly masaya hafa na priniponi suka maulakat suka timaulik. Angin gua sapoti sota huzung. Angin taja sapoti sulit tati. Basta na mumu pura esti na taimamalo na cetsu. Taimanu tau na maulaki eslata angin ti maulaki igimata. Intungo na todo I tauto man sinatsaga za man mobli zan aftu bula sacrificia pago za makat I tempota za anakku I salan puna na maulaki eslata para todo I tauta. Enigi masangani I presidenti puna hana huzung FEMA dan supporti esti na tauta dan I eslata. Masaya tamano. Gaiga si Uncle Sam pago. Bulat tumogo pago FEMA. Uncle Sam hafata togwi. Pago it. So, with that being said, I commend the author of this legislation, although we were heated this afternoon, or this morning. This is our job. This is what we were elected to do. Whether we like these laws that are proffered, whether we like the provision, the funding source, or whatnot, it needs to be entertained. This is an emergency. Our people are hurting, and this is what our people elected us to do. Whether or not we get the support, at least let it have its due process. Yeah, make some Snickers again. Shame on you. I'm not interrupting you, Senator Typhoon, the whole time you were making Snickers.
Senators, please. Senator Quinata, you still have the floor. Please proceed.
So I just, we're doing what we can as a body, and that's all I'm asking is that we just push forward and help each other to get our island back in motion. I commend also Senator Dwayne for wanting us to go out there and help as much people out there. I think that's great. Let's get out there to the people. Because our people need us. If I wasn't in crutches, I'd be out there. So, with that being said, I supported this measure to help our people as much as possible, whatever and however we can. I don't have any comments further for the panel. I don't have any questions for them. I just wish them all the best again, and we'll get through this one day at a time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Buen provecho, Senator Quinata. Senator Fisher, you are recognized at this time to ask questions to the panel.
Thank you, Chair. I have to disagree with a statement that was recently made that this is what the people elected us to do, to pass a law like this. The people elected us to assist. They did not elect us to deceive them. And this law was born of deceit. The author of this bill knew there was no money available when they drafted it. One may say that there is a nefarious reason. One may say that. I see that you're getting ready to launch on me. I don't know why, but you're looking like it. This is deceitful.
Don't assume, Ms. Senator. Please proceed.
I will assume, ma'am. I will assume. I am familiar with circumstantial evidence. I will assume very much that this entire measure was born of deceit and political advantage. People.
Point of personal privilege, Madam Chair.
State your point of personal privilege, Legislative Secretary, please.
The speaker is calling me, the current speaker is calling me deceitful, a liar to the people of Guam. We're here today to discuss this bill and the funding sources available, so I ask that he refrain from doing so.
That is an
Thank you so very much, Legislative Secretary. Senator Fisher, you may proceed.
That is an improper use.
Senator, please.
I am proceeding.
Proceed.
I am proceeding. In what sense am I not proceeding? That was an improper point of personal privilege.
Senator, on the merits, please.
On the merits, ma'am.
To the panel.
On the merits, ma'am.
Or to the comment without any inferences. Please proceed.
I will exercise my right to this floor to speak with, and now what are you going to do, cut me off? All right, let me direct this question then to the Department of Revenue and Tax. I read this bill, it's just a drafting nightmare. Is there a means test attached to this bill, or will everyone, rich and poor, get $500?
There is no indication of income threshold on this particular measure.
So the very rich get it, and presumably the poor, if we can find them, because there are maybe thousands of people who are now homeless on island. That's not addressed. It wasn't meant to be addressed. This bill was never meant to pass. This bill was made and born of dishonor. Thank you.
You're welcome, Senator Fisher. Senator Chaitigui, you are recognized at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Carlson, yesterday you talked to us about the $11 million of the governor had in transfer authority. And you said that the $11 million in her ability to transfer after everything has been paid off, that money consisted 90% of what?
What I mentioned yesterday was the CRER had a $265 million general fund balance. Then we went through an exercise of removing the legislatively imposed exemptions for the governor to transfer out of, and that number came down to, I think, 189, and you multiply that by, you take that 265 minus 189, you come up with, I think, 71 times 15%, came out to like 11.9 million, and what I was saying was that 8 months into the fiscal year, if somebody was going to get a capital item, they probably already got it. That money would eat into payroll, is what I was saying. And Mr. Byrne is here today, and Mr. Byrne and I, even though he was off island, we spoke at length numerous times, and he concurred that it would have an adverse effect on
Thank you, Lester. You're repeating exactly what you told this body yesterday. You also mentioned, I mean, we said this is a $50 million appropriation to give to the governor, but she doesn't even have close to that. And the 11 million is mostly on payroll. Everyone in this body heard what you said. There was no money at all. But yet, somebody needed to have some kind of political clout, and at the detriment of our people. To use them, to deceive them, just so they, you know, I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of the governor. Everybody knows that. You know, I call it out the way it is. But to come here today just so that the administration has to be looked at like the bad guy because they can't pay out any funding is a political game that this body is playing. Just to make a point, oh, let's let the governor say she can't pay it out. That's exactly why we're here today. That is uncalled for. Lester, CRER, we are short $7 million. And because of this storm and the recovery and the taxes we are anticipated to get, what is the forecast in the next 2 months? Oh, and by the way, Lester, GVB just said it's going to take 30 months now to recover in our tourist industry. So what is the forecast in the next 2 months? Lester?
I'm thinking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, please.
But first off, Senator Typhoon, I'm really sorry that I have to say what I had to say, but, you know, I really wish I had other good news, but being called down here to state the financial situation of the government, I told Edward and Daphne I would take the lead on that. It's a part I do not relish, and I'm still very uncomfortable having to continue down the line. Getting back to your question.
But first, Lester, you have no reason to apologize. We need to apologize to you because everything you're telling us is what you told us yesterday.
Getting back to your question, I think we're going to see a decline in the month of June. We don't even have all of our retail outlets, the big ones, like the Mighty Payless, opened up just recently. We get a lot of money from retail sales, and when you don't have everybody open, that takes a hit the general fund. The moratorium on the gas, you know, I don't think we absolved the fuel companies of the BPT. Is that accurate? Yeah, so, you know, everybody's gassing like there's no tomorrow, probably more so than is necessary, but I think it's going to be slow, Senator. I can't give you a number, but again, we're all in recovery. So it's going to be a very difficult task to keep the government operating and to fund the recovery. But we're going to give it our best shot.
FEMA mentioned yesterday, Mr. Carlson, that this is the beginning of typhoon, that the waters in these areas are warm, which means that's anticipated that we may get hit again. What kind of funding will we have in the event that happens? And if you can answer the question regarding FEMA, if we're throwing out money right now using our general fund money and FEMA sees that we're doing this, do you think they will stop from providing even additional funding that's needed? Because here we are throwing money out that we don't have, supposedly. Not supposedly, I'm sorry, let me retract that. We don't have the money. I don't know how many people up there need to say it, in different languages maybe, to say we don't have the money. And everybody knew that since yesterday. Sorry, I regressed. Go ahead, Lester. Will we have funding in the event we get hit with another typhoon in the next, let's say, 2 months?
We'd be screwed.
Exactly. And how about FEMA? If we're giving out funding, how is FEMA going to interpret that?
I don't believe that has any bearing. I think they're parallel tracks.
They'll focus it. But if we give out funding, will FEMA anticipate that money as, okay, you have a claim of $1,000, you got $500 from the government of Guam, we'll give you the other $5 to make you whole again. Could that happen?
I don't believe so, but you'd have to ask Charles.
I will ask Charles, because it's time we stop deceiving our people and giving them false hope and making this a political game in this body. Lester, the funding that we put out for DOE to help with the infrastructure, which they're trying to do during the summertime before school starts, so they don't get, a demerit from public health, that's still on the books. Is there any money to help DOE to get them ready for the next school year so that they can open?
I think DOE has told the body that they have over $100 million that they're working to try to get out for that reason. So yes, they do have.
And do you think because of this storm and all the issues that we come about, it will probably cost more?
You probably have a good point.
Additional damage, one they did not anticipate when they were giving us that figure. And then we have a law that says they have to pass, the public health has to pass them in order to open up the school. Lester and Mr. Mr. Byrne and Daphne, I am so sorry. They're playing games here in this legislature. There's better things for you to do to help our people to go out there and be there for them than us to put out a bill, not us, individuals who want to get recognized as being the hero, when all along they knew it's not going to come to the people. There's no money. This is disingenuous. Shame, 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 shame.
Point of order, time, ma'am.
Oh, it is? Oh, thank you, Senator Parkinson. He's very good at ensuring that the time has been made, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, but let's not deceive the people any longer. And I make a motion that we rise out of the committee of the whole to the subject, arise out of this session to subject of the call of the speaker. I make that motion to adjourn.
On the motion to adjourn, there is an objection. All those who wish to move to adjourn this session, Subject to the call of the speaker, please signify by raising your hand. 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion fails. Thank you, Senator. We are on, we have completed the first round, and we are going to round 2. No. Just going to take a moment's recess. This legislature is back in session. We are now on round 2. Speaker Therese Terlaye, you are recognized. Speaker Therese, we're having technical difficulties right now. Can we get the audio team to work the mics, please? We'll take a moment's recess. Imina Shelton and Legislature in Guahan is back from recess. I'd like to thank the audio team for fixing the glitch. Speaker Therese Terlaye, I'm going to recognize you at this time.
I wanted to know if 50 million is enough to fund it at this rate that's listed in the bill? And what would 30 million fund?
So our team, hold on just a second. So we went back and looked at historical numbers of filers and we came up with a bit of a range. And if we look at the monthly income tax refund status report, which is submitted to the Speaker's Office of the Legislature, and we look at the last few years, 2020 had the highest number of tax returns, Forms 1040 filed. And in 2020, we saw over 87,000 tax returns filed. And historically, though, that's actually a little high. We believe that the reason why that occurred is, of course, because we had EIP at that time, and people who didn't normally file a return, so people who were Social Security recipients only receive like certain types of federal assistance. They are not required to file. They ended up having to file in order to receive EIP. And so, again, we had over 70,000 2021 filers, but again, over 87,000 2020 filers. Potentially because, of course, this particular bill does replicate some of the language from what we saw as in COVID aid. Again, with regards to a range, at the 500, of course, which was what we were originally thinking it would be, we didn't know that it was going to be, there was going to be a $1,000 for, that was contemplated for married filing joint. But at 500 and 500, meaning 500 for all tax filers, assuming about 76,000 filers, or 75,992, because I know I did give some numbers to Senator San Augustine, that's about 37.9, almost $38 million. And that's, again, it's 75 or 76,000 taxpayers. But say that ended up becoming 87,000 taxpayers, or 87,159, which is what we saw for 2020. And again, this is at 500 and 500, it would be about 44 million. If we say that we're going to utilize the $1,000 instead if 500 and 1,000 instead, and 100% of filers filed, then I would say the range could be between 49 million to 56 million. That's the range if it was at 500 and 1,000.
Say it again, the total?
So at 500 and 500, meaning at 500 and 500, the range is probably about 38 to 44 million, not taking into consideration any administrative expenses. At 500 and 1,000, meaning 500 for single filers, 1,000 for married filing joint, the range is about 49 million to 56 million, and again, not taking into consideration administrative expenses.
All right. All right, thank you. I have no further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Speaker Terlaye.
Madam Chair?
Yes, do you, Senator Nicolas?
Motion to recess, ma'am?
On the motion to recess, there is an objection. All those in favor for the recess, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 4, 6, 8. We are in recess. How long? This body's back from recess. We will take a recess till 2 o'clock this afternoon.